We all start somewhere. Hey guys, so I just wanted to take a bit to talk about my history with the first ever video game console that I owned personally. So I got my Game Boy Advance in what I believe to be Christmas of 2003, and the first game I got with it was Pokemon Ruby. This is actually the exact copy of Pokemon Ruby and the exact Game Boy Advance that I had on that Christmas. So the first thing you're going to notice is that my Pokemon Ruby had the label ripped off. That's because I was a really dumb kid and I liked ripping the labels off my games so I could make custom labels. As an adult, I definitely regret doing that, especially with how expensive some of these games ended up being. But if I really had to ask myself where it all went wrong, it was definitely this and this Game Boy Advance. I loved Pokemon ever since I was a kid with the anime and the toys and stuff. But this was actually my first game. I started here. Pokemon has pretty much stuck with me my entire life. I loved it back then, and we tolerate it now. I remember being really confused by the turn-based battles at the time. I think I was just expecting the games to be a lot more dynamic like the anime. You know, Pokemon running around and actually fighting and stuff. And even the turn-based battle system, even back then, was a lot for me to, I guess, grasp. But even still, I really enjoyed the game even back then. I just remember running around catching Pokemon and having a lot of fun the entire time. On the topic of Pokemon, there was another Pokemon game I actually played a lot when I was a kid. It was actually this one, Pokemon Pinball Ruby and Sapphire. I played this game so much as a kid, I think I had an unhealthy addiction to it. And I wasn't the only one. My dad actually played it a bunch too. Between me and my dad playing this game, I think we managed to basically complete the entire Pokedex. I don't know how many people are even able to say they've done that. Well, would you look at that? I just checked, and it looks like we have almost every Pokemon. You can see it says 200 out of 200, but I forgot that if you scroll all the way to the bottom, no Rayquaza. We're going to have to go back and get that someday. Honestly, I think this game's always going to hold a special place in my heart. It's nothing crazy, it's just pinball with a Pokemon skin, obviously, but it's just so much fun and the presentation is so nice. Like, look at all the sound effects and the Pokemon all around with their own unique animations. And just all the memories I have playing this game. It's just one of my favorite games to always go back to. Now, another game I played a lot as a kid was actually Donkey Kong Country. I didn't actually know this was an old game at the time. I just thought it was just a game. But this is, I believe, one of the, either the second or third Game Boy Advance game I got. And I played this game so much, and let me tell you, I was very bad at it. Big surprise coming from someone who was probably like 10 at the time. Not even. Donkey Kong Country games are notoriously pretty difficult, but I did eventually get around to beating it. And even, like, when I was younger, I could appreciate, like, the visuals. The music is always amazing. I mean, you don't need me to tell you how great this game is. But even stuff like The Secret at the beginning, when I found this as a kid, it blew my mind that something like this could be in a game. I mean, obviously I didn't have much, like, I could go off of from only playing, like, maybe 3 or 4 games at the time. But I was just like, this probably just piqued a lot of my curiosity for other games, even as I grew up. One character that was surprisingly absent, you might have noticed from a lot of my games as a kid, was actually Mario. Yeah, I didn't actually play too many dedicated Mario games on my Game Boy Advance. The only one I had, really, was actually this one. Mario Kart Super Circuit, which looks like it was hit by a fucking truck. Ironically, I think this is the first instance I had of not really liking a game. Yeah, this game was, I could appreciate it more now for what it is, but even back then I always thought something about it just felt off. The controls were weird and slippery. I never really liked how it looks. I mean, now in hindsight I know it's just mostly designed to be based around Mario Kart on the Super Nintendo, but I feel like that's not a very great thing to go off of. It's probably my least favorite Mario Kart game now, but I could appreciate it enough now, and as a kid it was a fun time killer for maybe 10-15 minutes. But it's not really the best, and I think even out of these games, it's probably the one I would rank the worst. Well, maybe second worst. But you know, it's not a bad game. WarioWare Mega Micro Games, and as you could tell, this is another victim of my stupidity. Yeah, this is another game I replaced the label on. I don't know why, I just thought it was fun when I was younger. I think this is actually a couple of pictures from one of the Mario parties, I want to say. Or maybe one of the Mario Kart manuals. I just cut it out and then stuck it on here. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that. But yeah, this is another game I actually got from a friend, and this game is actually very fun. All the WarioWares are pretty fun, actually. The first one's very simple, but it has a lot going for it even now. It's fun to go back to sometimes. Well, I say it probably aged the worst out of all the like WarioWares that came after it, you know, like Twisted and even WarioWare Gold. I feel like this game still has some unique mini games that are unique enough to where we weren't going back to. And I actually also prefer, I think, Mega Party games on the GameCube, which is basically just this game, but it turns it into a multiplayer party game. I feel like that takes this very basic concept of the original game and turns it into something a bit more unique, and I feel like that game is a bit more fun to go back to than this one. But that's enough talking about Wario. Now I want to talk about the character that made me into the Nintendo fan that I am today. It's all your fault. Yeah, Kirby actually is probably the Nintendo character I was obsessed with the most for the longest time. Even for a while, I would say I was more of a Kirby fan than a Mario one, which is pretty interesting. I think even back then, I mean, I didn't know back then that this is secretly one of those games that was secretly an old game in disguise. But I still found it very fun. It looked cute, it sounded great. It was actually one of the first games I ever beaten. I remember I was so excited when I beat this game for the first time. And the final boss is just so cool. I remember I even went and told all my friends the next day in school. This game was just so much fun, and while it's not the most unique Kirby game, and I don't really see myself going back to it all too much, especially with, Amazing Mirror and Squeak Squad on the DS and some of the later games, this game is still fun, and it still has a special place in my heart. Now, while I really enjoyed this game, and I could definitely see more of its flaws now, I think I definitely enjoyed its sequel more, well, not sequel, but the game that followed it up way more. I think a lot of people will also agree that this game is significantly better. And honestly, it's still one of the best Kirby games out there. Yeah, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror is absolutely amazing. Everything about it is fun. It's a very unique Kirby game, being that it's a very almost open world Metroidvania Kirby game. It's also got amazing multiplayer. It's very fun. For me back then, Kirby and the Amazing Mirror was as good of a sequel, I know it's not really a sequel, but that's basically what it was to me, as a game could possibly get. Everything about this game was such a big step up from what I had previously played in Dreamland, that it was actually just kind of mind-blowing. One thing that always stuck out to me was the backgrounds themselves. The backgrounds in this game are very unique, and they just have so much depth and vibrance to them. Even the enemies and the new copy abilities, it was just everything that I played in the Return to Dreamland, but so much more and special. And while Kirby Nightmare in Dreamland was the first game I ever beat, this game was actually the first game I ever 100%ed, which is not something I really did a lot back then, or ever. I didn't do that until I was a lot older. But this game just always stuck out to me, and I find myself replaying this game very frequently. Like, usually at least once every 2 or 3 years. Which I think emphasizes another strong thing about this game being its replayability. I think even now, this is still one of the most replayable Kirby games ever. The Metroidvania is just such a good style for Kirby, I'm surprised they didn't do it more. It even got me into the genre now that I think about it. I've played so many Metroid games and other stuff like Shantae that are all I think I wouldn't have gotten into them if I hadn't played this game and gotten into that style. I still love Kirby even to this day. I've played pretty much all his games, and I think I would say I'm honestly a bigger Kirby fan than a Mario one. At least in terms of the 2D games. Like, if you give me any 2D Kirby game, I think I'd rather play it over, so let's say, New Super Mario Bros. Or New Super Mario Bros. U. Now, while I played a lot of Pokemon Ruby, Kirby, and Donkey Kong, I think the game that actually gave Pokemon Pinball a run for its money the most was honestly Pac-Man Collection. This was actually, I think, the second game I ever had on the Game Boy Advance. I believe it was a birthday present. And honestly, this game has a lot more going for it than you might expect. So with this game, you basically get 4 different versions of Pac-Man. You get Pac-Man, you get Pac-Attack, Pac-Mania, and Pac-Man Arrangement. Now, the 2 I played the most were original Pac-Man, and not Pac-Attack, but Pac-Mania. So I would spend so many hours playing this as a kid. There were certain days where I would just play this for nonstop, maybe 5 or 6 hours straight. And I think my favorite of the bunch was actually Pac-Mania. I just really liked the way it looks, and it had a bunch of different little things about it that I think set it apart and made it a bit more addicting to me personally than regular Pac-Man. So with Pac-Mania, you have more of an isometric view, and you also have the ability to jump. That alone just made it so much more engaging to me. And I don't know why, something about this game, I mean, it's Pac-Man, everybody knows it's super addicting, but something about this version specifically just had me in a trance for more hours than I would like to admit. Now, while I admit this collection is just kind of simple, it is just 4 Pac-Man games and 1 puzzle game, I think it had enough to at least have me keep coming back and really want to get better at it. I remember getting fixated on trying to get as many high scores as possible, especially in Pac-Mania. But even the other versions of Pac-Man I still found myself going back to from time to time. Even the original Pac-Man, if you take a look at that, had something special about it. Where is it? There it is. If you take a look at this, you actually have two different versions you could switch from. You could play it like this, or you could play a more zoomed-in version. So you could play it like this, where it's basically Pac-Man for ants. And if you go to the main menu, you could basically play a more zoomed-in version. So this is kind of like I had two different versions of Pac-Man in itself. While I did play this game a lot, I definitely played it more in terms of phases. It just kind of came and went whenever I would feel like playing it. One thing that I also would always get back into is actually Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Specifically, Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, is probably an anime I've seen probably 7 or 8 times in my life. I really like Yu-Gi-Oh! I still play it on and off occasionally. I always get back into it. And this game is one that I've always found myself coming back to. Not just because it's based on Yu-Gi-Oh! GX, but honestly, I just really like the gameplay in this one. It's pretty simple. So you have calendar days and you just go around Duel Academy and you look for characters to duel. And you duel those characters for stuff like money to buy other cards. So we'll go to the Cypher's dorm and see if Jaden wants to duel. Yep. They almost always are. This game also started a trend of games that I would receive both on this console and some of my other ones I would get shortly after, like the GameCube, which was games that were based on things that I liked. Which is exactly where this comes in. Yep, this is my first shovelware. Everybody remembers their first. This game is obviously based on Finding Nemo the movie. I played it a bunch as a kid, but I go back and watch videos of this game on YouTube sometimes, and everybody always said it's extremely hard, which makes me feel vindicated because I got stuck like 3 levels into this game. To any sane person, this game absolutely wouldn't be special, but I have to admit it's a little special to me because it was one of the first games I ever played. I am one of those people who thinks just because you grew up with something doesn't necessarily mean it's worth going back to. I mean, I grew up with asthma, that doesn't mean it's good. But speaking of things that aren't good, I want to take a minute to talk about these. These are Game Boy Advance videos. I had so many of these, and these were the first 2 I ever had, 2 Pokemon ones. I have watched so many of these on car rides, it is not even funny. These things, so I have a soft spot in my heart for like really bad media players. I had a bunch of these, with these 2 being the first, and I also had the Video Now, if you know what that is. And these are just the type of thing Nintendo would definitely never make nowadays. And I won't lie, I occasionally bust these out for the nostalgia and also just the novelty of watching Pokemon or Sonic X or Shrek on a little 3-inch screen. Also, these things are just really fun to collect for. I have almost the entire set at this point. I'm only missing a few. But yeah, that's my earliest years of gaming with my first ever game console. I still love the GBASP and its games, despite many of them being derivative of older games. But to be honest, I don't think I would have gotten into video games if it wasn't for this thing. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again. Bye-bye.